Imagine looking at the woman you are supposed to marry in just a few weeks. The woman you have built a life with, only for her to look you dead in the eye and deliver a jaw-dropping ultimatum. She told me our wedding was officially off unless I swallowed my pride and apologized to her ex-boyfriend. No joke. No hesitation. She was perfectly willing to throw away our entire future because she felt her ex deserved an apology from me. So, I looked right back at her, and I gave her my answer. I said, "Then the wedding is canceled." She laughed it off, assuming I was just calling a bluff. But she stopped laughing a few hours later when the venue coordinator contacted her to confirm that I had officially pulled the plug. Welcome back to the channel. Guys, let us dive into exactly how a simple boundary turned into the end of an engagement. My name is Jake. I am 32 years old, and I work in information technology support for a mid-sized logistics company based out in Denver, Colorado. My weeks used to be a pretty standard American routine: survive the commute down Interstate 25, hit the gym, eat dinner, sleep, and repeat. My fiancée was Chloe. She is 29, and she works as a dental office manager. We had been together for 3 years, engaged for 6 months, and we did not live together yet because we agreed to wait until after we tied the knot to combine our apartment leases into one place. Up until last month, I would have told anyone we were solid, not perfect, but dealing with normal adult problems, schedules, money conversations, family boundaries. The kind of stuff you solve with shared calendars and honest talks. Chloe has an ex-boyfriend named Tyler. They dated before me on and off. And she says it ended because he was immature and could not commit. Fine. I have my own history, too. The difference is I do not drag it into the present. Tyler still floated around her life in weird ways. Mutual friends, random group events at local breweries, and the occasional text that she insisted was harmless. I did not love it, but I also did not want to be the controlling guy who bans friendships. So, I kept it simple. I told her, I am not interested in him being part of our marriage in any capacity. That should have been easy. Then, Chloe started wedding planning like it was a military operation where I was the unpaid intern. Every decision came with a tone. If I asked a question, she acted like I was slowing her down on purpose. If I disagreed, she would go quiet and then punish me with icy one-word answers for the rest of the night. 2 weeks ago, she told me Tyler was coming to the wedding, not invited by me, not even as a plus one. She said he was coming because he helped introduce her to one of our vendors years ago, and it would be rude not to include him. That made zero sense. But she said it like it was obvious, and I was being dense. I told her, no, calm, clear, no drama. I said I am not getting married with her ex sitting there watching it happen. She rolled her eyes and said, I was insecure. Then she hit me with something that made my stomach drop. She said the wedding was canceled unless I apologized to Tyler for being disrespectful about him. I thought she was bluffing. I said, okay, then the wedding is canceled. And I meant it. She laughed like I had just told a joke, grabbed her car keys, and left. The last thing she texted me that night was that I would come crawling back once I realized how many thousands of dollars were already spent. I did not crawl. I started making calls. The next morning, I called the venue first. I did not yell. I did not give a dramatic speech. I simply asked what the cancellation policy was and what steps were required to officially terminate the contract. They told me both parties had signed, but either one of us could request a cancellation. There would be a financial penalty depending on timing. I asked them to email me the form. While I waited, I called the caterer and the photographer. Samitone. Same question. I kept it practical. If the wedding was conditional on me apologizing to her ex, Then it was not a wedding I was interested in funding. Chloe texted around noon. She sent a screenshot of a romantic bed and breakfast confirmation out in Napa Valley and wrote, "Hope you are proud of yourself. Non-refundable." I replied that I was handling the venue cancellation and that we could split whatever financial losses were legally ours. I kept it neutral. No insults. No threats. She immediately called. The first thing she said was, "Are you seriously trying to embarrass me?" That word stuck out. Embarrass. I told her, "I am not apologizing to a man who has no place in our marriage." I also said, "If you truly believe the wedding should hinge on that, then canceling it is the logical outcome." She shifted tactics fast. Suddenly, it was not about Tyler. It was about me disrespecting her judgment. She said I was making her choose sides and that healthy adults do not give ultimatums. I reminded her she gave the ultimatum, "Apologize to Tyler, or the wedding is canceled." I just accepted her terms. There was a long silence. Then she said, "You are overreacting." I did not mean actually canceled. That was the first crack. I asked her directly if Tyler was coming to the wedding. She hesitated. Then she said, he would only come if I could be mature. That told me everything. I submitted the cancellation form that afternoon. I did not do it impulsively. I read the contract twice. The deposit loss was significant but not devastating. I could absorb my half without ruining my finances. It would hurt, but not as much as starting a marriage where my boundaries are negotiable based on her mood. 3 days later, the venue emailed both of us confirming receipt and asking Chloe to acknowledge the cancellation. That is when she realized I was not posturing. She showed up at my apartment that night without calling. She was not laughing anymore. When Chloe knocked, it was close to 9 o'clock at night. I'd already finished dinner and was answering emails. I almost did not open the door, but I figured avoiding her would just drag this out. She walked in like she still lived there, dropped her purse on my kitchen island, and immediately started in. She said I blindsided her. That canceling without another discussion was extreme. That I made her look unstable to the venue coordinator. She said I was focusing on the wrong issue, that this was about trust. According to her, if I trusted her, I would not feel threatened by a man she dated years ago. She kept repeating that he was important to her personal growth and that cutting him out would be immature. I told her I'm not threatened. I am unwilling to celebrate the start of my marriage with her ex in the audience because she thinks optics matter more than my comfort. She snapped and called me controlling. Then she said something that shifted the entire conversation. She said Tyler felt disrespected by the way I talked about him. I asked when exactly I talked about him to Tyler. She hesitated again. Then she admitted she had shown him screenshots of our private argument about the wedding guest list. She said she wanted his perspective because he knows her well. That was the first time I felt actual clarity, instead of frustration. This was not about inviting an ex. This was about triangulation. She was running our conflict through him and then expecting me to apologize for having an opinion about my own wedding. I told her that sharing our private conversations with an ex crossed a massive boundary for me. She shrugged and said I was being dramatic. According to her, I should be grateful she has friends who care enough to weigh in. Friends. That word again? I asked her directly if she was still emotionally attached to him. She got angry instantly. She said I was disgusting for implying that. She said if she wanted Tyler, she would not be engaged to me. That answer sounded rehearsed. I did not raise my voice. I told her this is exactly why I canceled. Because instead of respecting a simple boundary, she escalated and involved the one person guaranteed to destabilize things. She looked at me like I had betrayed her. Then she said something I did not expect. She said, if I undo the cancellation and apologize to Tyler, she will forgive me for embarrassing her. Forgive me. That was when I realized this was not a misunderstanding. It was a power test. And she was still assuming I would fold. When she said she would forgive me, it landed wrong. Not dramatic. Not explosive. Just wrong in a quiet, Final way. I looked around my apartment for a second. At my couch, my kitchen counter, the place I pay for and keep stable. Then I looked back at her and realized she was still talking like this was a negotiation, where she held all the leverage. I told her we were done for tonight and that she needed to leave. She blinked like she did not process it. I repeated it calmly. This conversation is over. You need to go home. She crossed her arms and said she was not finished. She said, adults do not walk away when things get uncomfortable. The irony was almost impressive. I did not argue. I walked to the door and opened it. She stood there staring at me, waiting for me to soften, waiting for me to apologize for setting a boundary inside my own apartment. I told her, this is my place. You are here as a guest. I am asking you to leave. Her voice changed. Sharper. She said I was trying to intimidate her, that this was emotionally abusive, that canceling the wedding and now physically removing her proved I was unstable. I stayed calm. I said there is nothing unstable about asking someone to leave your home when they are disrespecting you. She grabbed her purse but did not move toward the door. Instead, she tried one more angle. She said, if I force her out, we are really over. That was the second power test. I told her, yes, if that is what it takes for you to understand I am serious, then yes. She stared at me for a long moment like she expected me to crack. When I did not, she walked past me and out into the hallway. Before leaving, she turned and said, you are going to regret this when you realize you threw away a marriage over your ego. I said, I am not throwing away a marriage. I am refusing to start one like this. Then I closed the door. I locked it. Not dramatically, just mechanically. I stood there for 1 minute afterward to make sure she was actually gone and not waiting for me to reopen it. She texted 10 minutes later, long paragraphs about how cold I was, how disappointed her parents would be, how people in our circle would talk. Not one sentence about respecting my boundary. That was when the calm really set in. Because if kicking her out of my apartment felt like absolute relief instead of panic, that told me everything I needed to know. After I locked the door, the messages kept coming. At first, it was anger. Then it shifted to guilt. She said I embarrassed her in front of the venue coordinator. She said her mom was asking questions. She said people were going to assume she did something terrible. I noticed something. Every text centered on her image, of her humiliation, her inconvenience. Not once did she say she understood why I was uncomfortable with Tyler being involved in our relationship. Around midnight, she called 3 times in a row. I let it ring out. I was not going to have another circular conversation where she reframed my boundary as aggression. The next morning, there were more messages. This time, she was calmer. She said we needed to fix this before it got out of hand. She suggested we meet for coffee and talk like adults. She also added that Tyler thought this whole thing was a massive misunderstanding and that he was willing to accept my apology privately if that made it easier. That line did it. The fact that he knew enough details to have an opinion meant she was still feeding him updates in real time. Our relationship was apparently group chat material. I responded one time. I said, I am not apologizing to him. And I am not continuing a relationship where my fiancée prioritizes her ex over basic boundaries. I wish you well. She immediately replied that I was being dramatic again, and that blocking her would prove I never loved her. I did not argue. I did not explain further. I blocked her number. Then I blocked her on social media, Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn. Because I know how these things go in American dating culture. I did not want indirect messages, public posts aimed at me, or mutual friends acting as messengers. It was not done in rage. It was strategic. If I left one channel open, she would use it to pull me back into a debate. And debate was her strength. She thrived in gray areas where she could reframe things until I was defending myself, instead of addressing the original issue. Blocking her was not about punishing her. It was about ending the cycle cleanly. 1 hour later, my phone lit up with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Tyler. I stared at the voicemail notification for a full minute before listening to it. Tyler's voice was calm. Too calm. He said he heard things had gotten out of hand and that he did not want to be the reason a marriage fell apart. He said he respected me and hoped we could clear the air man to man. That phrasing alone told me this was not accidental involvement. He felt entitled to step in. He also said Chloe was really upset and that she tends to react emotionally when she feels cornered. He framed himself as the reasonable one, the mediator. I did not call him back. Instead, I saved the voicemail and took a screenshot of the call log. Not because I planned to escalate anything, but because documentation matters when stories start shifting. About 1 hour later, my sister texted asking what was going on. Chloe had apparently called her crying, saying I abruptly canceled the wedding over a minor guest list disagreement and then blocked her without explanation. That was fast. I called my sister and gave her the short version. No dramatics. Just facts. Chloe invited her ex to the wedding against my wishes. She shared our private arguments with him. She demanded I apologize to him or the wedding was off. I accepted that condition. My sister went quiet for a second and then said, "That is not a minor disagreement." Exactly. By mid-afternoon, Chloe tried reaching me through email. Subject line, "Please just listen." I read it once. It was more of the same. She said she felt attacked and unsupported. She said Tyler was only trying to help. She said blocking her was cruel and immature. She also slipped in that canceling the venue without her agreement could have legal consequences for me if she decided to pursue damages in civil court. That part was interesting. Not because I was worried the contract clearly allowed cancellation by either party, but because it showed her mindset. This was no longer about repairing anything. It was about leverage. Late that evening, Tyler texted again from a different number. He said, "Avoiding the conversation makes you look guilty." I blocked that number. 2. At that point, a pattern was obvious. Chloe was not trying to fix our relationship privately. She was building a narrative where I was unstable and unreasonable. And Tyler was not a bystander. He was actively participating. That confirmed something I had been hesitant to say out loud. This was never just about a wedding guest. It was about whether I was willing to compete with her ex for influence inside my own relationship. 2 days passed without direct contact because I had closed every door she tried to use. That did not stop the ripple effects. A mutual friend, Marcus, messaged me asking if I was okay. He said Chloe told their friend group that I had a jealousy issue and sabotaged the wedding after spiraling over nothing. According to her version, Tyler was invited out of courtesy, and I reacted like she had cheated. I called Marcus instead of texting back. I laid out the timeline in simple terms. She invited her ex. I said no. She made the wedding conditional on me apologizing to him. I accepted. She involved him in private arguments. I ended it. Marcus was quiet for a while. Then he said, "That is not how she presented it." Of course, it was not. That afternoon, I received an email from Chloe's mother asking if we could talk. It was polite but pointed. She said, "Marriages require compromise, and pride should not ruin a future." That word again, pride. I responded respectfully. I said this was not about pride. It was about boundaries and trust. I told her I was not comfortable marrying someone who involved her ex in our conflicts and made my participation conditional on appeasing him. She did not reply. Later that night, Chloe showed up at my apartment building again. I know because my downstairs neighbor texted me that someone was buzzing the intercom repeatedly. I did not answer. I had already made it clear she was not welcome. Instead, she sent one final email, It was longer than the others. Less angry. More strategic. She said she was willing to uninvite Tyler if that is what it took to move forward. But she needed reassurance that I would not humiliate her. Like that again. She also asked that I apologize to her for overreacting and for canceling the venue without giving her a chance to calm down. There it was. She would remove Tyler as a guest, but only if I admitted fault for standing my ground. I read it twice to make sure I was not misinterpreting it. It was not an apology. It was a trade. And I realized something uncomfortable but necessary. If I agreed, I would be setting the precedent that whenever she pushed too far and I resisted, I would eventually absorb the blame to restore peace. That is not a partnership. That is training. So, I did not negotiate. I forwarded the email to myself for record keeping. Then I contacted the venue one more time to confirm the cancellation was finalized and non-reversible without a brand new contract. They confirmed it was closed. There was no going back now. Not administratively. And not personally. The following week was quieter on the surface, but not actually calm. Chloe stopped trying to contact me directly. Instead, I started hearing secondhand updates. A coworker of hers apparently told a mutual acquaintance that I had cold feet. Someone else heard that I was insecure about her past and could not handle being with a woman who had history. It was interesting how consistent the framing was. In every version, I was fragile, overwhelmed, threatened. Never. Once was the story that she demanded. I apologized to her ex as a condition of marriage. I did not respond publicly. I did not make posts or try to correct the narrative in every circle. That is a losing game. People believe what aligns with their prior opinions. Instead, I focused on logistics. We had already planned to move into a new townhouse together after the wedding. The lease application was pending. I called the property manager and withdrew my portion formally. I asked for written confirmation that I was no longer attached to the file. I did not want my name lingering anywhere she could use it. I also reviewed the vendor contracts to ensure my financial exposure was capped. The deposit losses were real but manageable. I paid my share immediately and kept the receipts. Around this time, one more unexpected thing happened. Tyler emailed me directly, not from a burner number, not anonymously, from his actual work address. He wrote that he felt obligated to step in because Chloe was spiraling and blaming herself. He said he never intended to cause division and that he respected my position as her future husband. Future husband. That phrase was either tone-deaf or deliberate. He also said that if I wanted to meet for coffee and clear misunderstandings, he was open to it. He emphasized that mature men communicate rather than shut people out. I read it carefully. There was no acknowledgement that inserting himself into our private conflict was inappropriate. No admission that receiving screenshots of our arguments crossed the line. Just a soft suggestion that I was the one avoiding growth. That was the final piece for me. Because I realized something simple. If I married Chloe, Tyler would not fade into the background. He would remain a consultant in our disputes, a shadow vote, and Chloe would continue to present that as reasonable. So I replied one time. I said, "There is no misunderstanding. This is not your relationship to mediate. Do not contact me again." Then I blocked his email. That night, for the first time since this started, my phone was completely silent, and the silence felt clean. About 1 week after everything went silent, I ran into Chloe at a grocery store near my place. Not planned. Just bad timing. She saw me first. I could tell because she froze mid-aisle in the dairy section, then straightened her posture like she was preparing for an audience. I considered turning around, but I decided I would not act like I had something to avoid. We ended up facing each other. She looked different, not devastated, not remorseful, composed. She said, "Hi," like we were co-workers who had not spoken in a few days. I nodded and said hello. There was a pause where she clearly expected me to open the door to conversation. I did not. So she did. She said she wished I had handled things differently. That canceling publicly instead of working through it privately hurt her deeply. She emphasized publicly as if I had posted a billboard in downtown Denver instead of contacting vendors directly. I told her I handled it privately. Vendors are part of wedding logistics. They needed accurate information. She sighed and said, "You know what I mean?" Then she said something that confirmed I made the right call. She said Tyler agreed that we both escalated and that with proper communication, we could have avoided this whole mess. There it was again. Tyler as evaluator. Tyler as judge. I asked her one final question. I said, "If we rewinded to that night and I said I am not apologizing, would you have respected that without consequences?" She hesitated. "Not long, but long enough." She said, "I just needed you to show me you could put my feelings first." That answer was honest and revealing. Putting her feelings first meant subordinating my own boundary. It meant accepting that her comfort with her ex outweighed my discomfort. I told her calmly that I am not interested in a relationship structured that way. She looked annoyed then. Not sad annoyed. Like I was being difficult for no reason. She said, "I guess that is it then." I said, "Yes, that is it." We stood there another second. Then she picked up her shopping basket and walked away without looking back. I did not feel anger or regret. Just confirmation. Because even at the very end, she framed the issue as my failure to prioritize her feelings, not her failure to protect our relationship from outside influence. And that difference is not small. It is foundational. It has been 3 months since the wedding was officially canceled. The financial fallout is completely settled. We split the non-refundable deposits according to the contracts we signed. There was no lawsuit. No dramatic legal threat. Just paperwork and receipts. The social version of events stabilized. 2. The people who wanted to believe I panicked still believe that. The people who asked for my side heard it and made their own judgment. I did not chase validation. Chloe and I have not spoken since the grocery store. A mutual friend mentioned recently that she and Tyler have been spending a lot of time together again. I did not ask follow-up questions. It is not my business anymore. If anything, it reinforces the instinct I had when she insisted he needed to be a part of our wedding day. Looking back, the actual trigger was small on paper. En invitation, an apology. A demand framed as a compromise, but the structure underneath it was not small. She involved her ex in our private conflict. She treated his opinion as relevant to our engagement. She positioned me as someone who needed to earn approval from a man who had no place in my future. And when I refused, she escalated instead of recalibrating. What stands out most is not the argument itself. It is how quickly she moved to control the narrative once I did not comply. Calling my sister, messaging friends, suggesting I was unstable. That was not panic. That was damage control. If I had apologized to Tyler, the wedding would have gone forward. On the surface, everything would have looked fine. Photos, smiles, speeches. But I would have known that when push came to shove, my boundary was negotiable. And her ex had a voice in our dynamic. That knowledge would not disappear after the honeymoon. People keep asking if I regret how firm I was. The honest answer is no. Canceling a wedding is expensive and inconvenient. Divorcing someone who does not respect your boundaries is far worse. I did not lose a marriage. I avoided one that was already structured against me. And the fact that she only believed I was serious once the venue confirmed it was canceled tells me everything about how she viewed my resolve. She thought I was bluffing. I was not. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Wishing you all the best. Stay healthy and take care.